For the past 3 years, I've spent $41,000 thinking I'm buying love and family togetherness. But then, in one phone call, my daughter-in-law snatched the phone and said something that broke my heart. "We got married yesterday, old man. Invite only the people who really matter." In that moment, I understood that I was no longer a father, nor a relative. I was just a walking ATM. But they forgot one thing, that one day, even a 7-8-year-old man can turn from prey to predator. And that's when the story begins. The late afternoon heat of Phoenix pressed against the walls of my living room, sunlight cutting through the thin curtains and casting long, suffocating shadows across the floor. I sat in my old recliner, the phone trembling slightly in my hand as I dialed my only son's number, Ethan. My heart carried a strange mix of nervous hope and quiet longing, as if this call might finally stitch me back into the fabric of his life. When the line connected, I heard his voice distant, cautious, almost hollow. "Dad." "Hey, son," I said, forcing cheer into my tone. "I just wanted to ask about the wedding plans. Have you and Madison set a date yet? I need to make sure my old suit still fits, or maybe I'll even buy a new one. I'd like to be ready." But before Ethan could respond, there was a sharp rustle, and then a clatter, as if the phone had been ripped from his hands. A new voice came through, sharper, colder than desert steel. Madison. Her laugh was not warm, but a cruel, jagged sound dripping with contempt. "Oh, we got married yesterday, old man. Small, private. Only the people who actually matter were invited." The words slammed into me like a hammer to the chest. The people who actually matter. For a second my mind reeled, as though someone had doused me with ice water. My pulse raced, my chest clenched so tight I could barely breathe. And then, like shards of broken glass, a memory cut through the haze. Ethan, as a boy, sprinting across the backyard with grass-stained knees, gripping my hand with that wide, innocent grin. "Dad, when I get married someday, you'll be right there in the front row, okay?" But here I was shut out, erased, treated not as a father but as a burden, a stranger. 3 years. For 3 years I had funneled $41,000, my entire life savings, into their hands. Rent, groceries, bills, emergencies, birthdays, Christmas. I thought I was building love. I thought I was securing family. Yet in that single merciless moment, staring into the abyss of Madison's disdain, I understood the truth. I wasn't a father. I wasn't family. I was nothing but an ATM with a pulse. Inside me, something shifted. The heartbroken father, weary and crumbling, was gasping his final breath. But in his place, something darker, colder, infinitely more dangerous began to rise. I felt my grief retreat, making space for a new force, icy, unyielding, sharp as the desert wind. The prey was gone. The predator was waking. So tell me this, when your own daughter-in-law dares to spit the words "useless old man" and erases you from your son's most sacred day, what would you do? Would you bow your head in silence? Or would you finally rise and strike back? Tell me your answer in the comments below, and don't forget to let me know where in the world you're watching this story from. It was a sweltering Tuesday afternoon, the Arizona sun blazing through the dusty glass of my living room window, heating the air until it felt suffocating. The steady tick of the wall clock echoed in the hollow silence of my Phoenix home, a silence that had haunted me since Eleanor, my wife of 40 years, passed away 3 years earlier. The house had become less of a sanctuary and more of a prison for one man's loneliness. I picked up the phone, clinging to a fragile hope. I dialed Ethan, my only son, my last living link to family. Perhaps, I thought, this call would bring a spark of joy, news of his wedding plans, a chance for me to prepare, to feel needed again. "Dad!" Ethan's voice came through, distant and uncertain. "Hey, son," I said softly. "I just wanted to ask if you and Madison have set a date for the ceremony. I'd like to make sure my suit still fits, maybe even buy a new one. I'd be honored to help however I can." But before Ethan could respond, there was a sharp shuffle, followed by the harsh scrape of a phone being yanked away. Then came her voice, Madison's voice, cold, metallic, a laugh like rusted wire. "Oh, we got married yesterday, old man. Small, private. Only the people who actually matter were invited." Her words cut deeper than any blade. My ears rang, my chest seized, as if someone had reached inside and crushed my heart with their bare hands. The people who actually matter. The phrase ricocheted through me like a cruel echo. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned bone white. The room spun. I staggered, catching myself against the coffee table. In my head, only two words pulsed like a curse: not important. For a fleeting moment, an old memory surfaced: a younger Ethan, no more than 10, sweaty and grinning after a little league game. He had thrown his arms around me and whispered, "Dad, you're the most important person in my life." And now, that same boy, grown into a man, stood silent in the background while his wife erased me from his life with a single, venomous sentence. "Wait, you mean you're already married?" My voice cracked. Barely more than a whisper. "You heard me," Madison sneered. "It was a beautiful ceremony. Small, intimate. Only the ones who contribute something meaningful to our lives." From somewhere in the background, I heard Ethan murmur weakly, but she cut him off like scolding a child. This woman, this parasite who had lived on my generosity for 3 years, dared to speak to me as though I were trash on the sidewalk. For 3 years, I had been their personal ATM. $500 a month for rent, extra cash for groceries when the fridge was empty, furniture when the apartment was bare, emergency funds whenever Madison claimed a health scare, car payments when Ethan lost his job, birthday gifts, Christmas presents, anniversaries for which I was never invited. One by one, the memories of every check I had written surfaced like ghosts. I saw Eleanor and me hunched over the kitchen table years ago, counting pennies, saving every dime for retirement. 40 years of labor and sacrifice, all of it drained away, and when I added the numbers together, the total hit me like a death blow: $41,000. "Dad, are you still there?" Ethan's voice broke through, trembling not with love, not with regret, but with fear. Fear for the rent that was due. I realized then what I truly was to him: not a father, not family, just a wallet with a voice. "I'm here," I answered quietly, my throat raw. "Listen, this isn't personal," Madison cut in again, dripping with contempt. "We're adults. We make our own decisions. Just because you throw money at us doesn't mean you own us or control our lives." Throw money. That was how she defined the sleepless nights I spent worrying, the sacrifices, the hope that generosity might buy me love. In her mouth my devotion became pathetic bribery. "I see," I whispered. "Good," she snapped. "Now about this month's rent." I ended the call. The silence afterward was crushing. Around me hung the relics of a life I once believed was meaningful. Ethan's childhood photos, trophies I had cheered for from the stands, graduation pictures I had framed with pride. I thought I had raised a son. Instead, I had raised a man who handed my heart to his wife to be shredded. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling until dawn. Something inside me broke. The desperate father, the gullible old fool who begged for scraps of affection, died there in the dark. In his place, something new stirred, something colder, calculated, ruthless. I had finally learned the difference between love and manipulation. If Madison and Ethan wanted to toy with my heart, then let them play their games. But soon, they would learn the hard truth. This old man had a few moves left, and this time, there would be no mercy. The next morning, I woke into a strange, cathedral-quiet stillness. Dawn poured across the bedroom walls, washing them a bold Arizona gold. For the first time in years, there was no weight on my chest urging me to call Ethan, no anxious itch to wonder whether Madison needed anything. The man I had been pliable, apologetic, always reaching for my wallet had died sometime in the night. I rose feeling like someone else. After coffee black, unhurried, I drove straight to Desert Community Bank on Camelback Road. The automatic doors sighed open, and the air smelled faintly of paper and polished tile. Mr. Chen, my account manager for 15 years, met me with his usual warm smile. "Mr. Carter here for the monthly transfers?" Actually, I'm here to cancel them. All of them. The pen in his hand hovered midair. He blinked. I met his eyes and didn't look away. There was no tremor in me, only a cold, even resolve that surprised even myself. Cancel the automatic transfers, he repeated carefully. You've had these set up for 3 years. Are you sure? I'm certain, I said, and remove both Ethan and Madison's access to my accounts. He nodded, typed, printed, slid papers across to sign. As he processed the changes, my phone began to buzz. Ethan. I let it ring. It stopped, then started again, and again. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the home screen was a warning beacon, 6 missed calls, a stack of frantic messages. Dad, the bank called. They said the transfers are canceled. This has to be a mistake. Call me back. I deleted everything without replying. Around noon, the phone rang again. I answered. Dad, what the hell is going on? Ethan's voice was panicked, thin with desperation. Rent's due tomorrow, and the money isn't there. That's correct, I said evenly. What do you mean that's correct? You always handle the rent. We're counting on you. You were counting on me, I said, past tense. Now you're counting on yourselves. In the background, Madison's voice sliced through, high and shrill with fury. A moment later, she had the phone. Henry, what sick game are you playing? You don't get to abandon your family because your feelings were hurt over some stupid wedding. I'm not abandoning anyone, Madison, I said. I'm simply done funding adults who treat me like garbage. You're being ridiculous. We've never treated you badly. You're family. I laughed, a sound without warmth. Family doesn't exclude each other from the most important moments of their lives. Family doesn't call their father a useless old man. I was upset yesterday, she snapped. I didn't mean. You meant every word, I said, calm as glass. And now you live with the consequences. Listen to me, she started. No, I said. You listen to me. For 3 years, I've been your personal bank. I paid your rent. I bought your food. I funded your lifestyle. And what did I receive in return? Contempt, disrespect. Yesterday, the final insult being told I don't matter. Dad, please. Ethan cut in. Back on the line now, breath hitching. I could hear the fear in his voice, not fear of losing me, but fear of losing the money. In that instant, it landed fully. To my son, I wasn't a man. I was a balance sheet with a pulse. Here's how this works now, I said, my voice steady, the words falling like measured blows. You want my money? Earn my respect first. You want my help? Start treating me like a human being, not a resource. You're being unreasonable, Ethan protested. For the first time in 3 years, I said, I'm being perfectly reasonable. The ATM is officially closed. I ended the call and turned the phone off. The house settled around me, quiet as a sanctuary. I sat in my recliner, feeling the silence breathe. Across the street, in the front window of the newer bungalow, my neighbor watched, arms folded, posture keen. I'd noticed her before, a woman about my age, with the measuring eyes of someone who missed nothing. Linda Morales, if I remembered the mailbox right. Something told me she might matter in whatever came next. This was only the beginning. 3 days of blessed silence. Then car doors slamming in my driveway, hard enough to rattle the air. Through the window I saw Ethan and Madison storming up the walkway, faces twisted with rage. I didn't move from my chair. Let them knock. They didn't knock. The door flew open. Of course they still had keys. Keys I'd given them back when I thought we were a family. What the hell do you think you're doing, old man? Madison spat as she barreled into my living room. The last veneer of politeness had peeled away. This was her true face. Ethan trailed behind her like a scolded dog, eyes pinned to the floor. I'm sitting in my own home, I said calmly. The question is, what are you doing here without permission? Without permission? She barked out a laugh that scraped the air. This is family business, Henry. You don't cut us off and think there won't be consequences. She stepped closer, jabbing a finger toward my face. You think you're clever? Sitting here on your little power trip, punishing us because we didn't invite you to one stupid ceremony? One stupid ceremony, I repeated. You mean your wedding, my son's wedding, the most important day of his life? Get over it, she screamed. We're adults. We make our own choices. Just because you're desperate and lonely doesn't mean we have to include you in everything. Desperate and lonely. That was how she saw me. How they both saw me. Madison, maybe we should, Ethan began weakly. Shut up, Ethan, she snapped, wheeling on him. Your father is trying to manipulate us with money. Then she turned back to me, eyes ablaze with contempt. Here's the deal. You pathetic old fool. You restart those transfers today or we'll make your life very difficult. We know lawyers. We know social workers. We can have you declared mentally incompetent faster than you can blink. The threat hung in the room like poison. My heartbeat thudded once, hard not from fear, but from a cold, rising anger. My own son stared at the floor while his wife threatened to erase my mind on paper and strip me of the life I'd worked for. Is that so? I asked, voice low. That's exactly so, she hissed. You think you can just abandon your responsibilities? We have bills because of promises you made. We have a lifestyle because you encouraged it. You created this situation and now you're going to fix it. I looked at Ethan. And you? I asked. Is this what you want to threaten your father? For a single beat, he lifted his eyes. I saw the boy I had raised flicker there, then vanish as Madison's elbow dug into his ribs. We just want what's fair, he mumbled. What we were promised. I never promised you anything but love and support, I said. Madison stepped so close I could feel the heat of her breath. Listen carefully, you sanctimonious old bastard, she said, each word a spark. We're not leaving until you call that bank and restore our access. And if you don't, we'll make sure everyone knows how confused and unstable you've become. The room seemed to grow colder. A switch flipped inside me. I rose slowly from the chair, leveled my eyes at hers, and let my voice drop to iron. Get out of my house now. Her face flushed a dangerous purple. You can't throw us out. We have rights. We're family. Family doesn't threaten each other, I said. Family doesn't call each other names. You're not family. You're parasites. You'll regret this, she shrieked as I opened the front door wide. The only thing I regret, I said, is not doing this 3 years ago. They stormed out. On the threshold, Madison turned for one last parting shot. This isn't over, Henry. Not even close. I shut the door and threw the deadbolt, the metallic click ringing like a vow. Then I walked to the window. Across the street, Linda Morales stepped onto her porch, arms still folded, eyes sharp as a hawk's. She had seen everything. When our gazes met, she dipped her chin in a slow, deliberate nod. A wisp of a smile touched her mouth, half reassurance, half recognition. I understood. I wasn't alone anymore. This was only the beginning. 20 minutes after Ethan and Madison's car disappeared down the street, the house settled into a suffocating quiet. My pulse still echoed in my ears from the storm that had just torn through my living room. Then a knock. Soft, measured, but certain. It broke the silence like a signal I'd been waiting for without knowing it. I opened the door to find Linda Morales on the porch, a woman about my age with dark hair pulled neatly back and eyes that were both calm and razor-sharp. She held 2 steaming cups of coffee, but there was a steadiness in her posture that said she'd brought more than caffeine. Mr. Carter, she said, voice low and clear. I'm Linda Morales, from across the street. I think we should talk. Something in her tone, courteous but unblinking, made me step aside. Please, come in. She handed me a cup and took a seat as if she'd done this 1,000 times, settling into the room with the confidence of someone accustomed to taking the lead. I watched what just happened, she began. And I have to tell you, your daughter-in-law's behavior concerns me deeply. If you don't mind, may I call you Henry? I nodded. I'm a retired private investigator, she said. 25 years with Morales and Associates here in Phoenix. She reached into her coat and produced an old ID card, edges worn, the print still crisp. Morales and Associates licensed investigator. When she set it on the coffee table, a few things about her watchful presence over the past months snapped into place. A private investigator, I said. That explains a lot. She leaned forward, those dark eyes unwavering. My instincts tell me Madison is dangerous, The threat she made about having you declared incompetent? I've seen that pattern before. She's not just greedy, Henry. She's calculated. What do you mean? I asked, though dread had already started to chill my spine. I've kept an eye out since I moved in 6 months ago, Linda said. Every Tuesday and Thursday, at exactly 9 a.m., Madison leaves your son's place. She's gone all day and returns in the evening. I've asked around. No one knows where she goes. For someone who supposedly doesn't work, that's unusual. I felt a cold line trace down my back. You think she's hiding something? I think she's living a double life, Linda replied, and I strongly suspect you're not her first target. Her words hung in the air like a sentence. My coffee cup trembled in my hands. Linda opened a small notebook, its pages densely marked with dates, times, and addresses. She tapped a line with her pen. 3 weeks ago, I followed her. She drove to Las Vegas, a same-day round trip. She spent the day in a quiet residential neighborhood, moving around like she belonged there. Maybe visiting friends, she added, though her tone made it clear she didn't believe that for a second. But the way she walked into that house, the ease with which she interacted with certain people. Henry, she acted like she had another life entirely. Are you saying she isn't who she claims to be? I asked, the room tightening around us. I'm saying there are pieces of Madison's story that don't fit, Linda said. And in my experience, when someone drains an elderly man's bank account while carefully hiding their routine, those secrets tend to explode. Something I hadn't felt in years flickered awake in my chest, hope, braided tightly with righteous anger. What do you propose we do? We get proof, she said, tapping the notebook again, each tap a gavel strike. Real, hard, undeniable evidence of who Madison is and what she's hiding. Then we expose whatever scheme she's running. She stood and offered her hand. Partners. I stood too and took it in a firm grip. Partners. On her way to the door, Linda paused and looked back, her expression frank but not unkind. Henry, whatever we uncover about Madison, it's going to get ugly before it gets better. Are you ready for that? I thought of Madison's sneer, of Ethan's eyes glued to the floor, of 3 long years of manipulation and lies. I thought of Eleanor and the dignity she'd taught me to protect. All my life, I said, I've tried to lead with kindness. But I see it now, kindness can feed parasites if you don't set a line. I'm done being prey. I met Linda's gaze, steady as bedrock. It's time I stopped being hunted and started to hunt. 2 weeks after Linda and I forged our unlikely alliance, my phone rang at 6 on a Thursday morning. Her voice was calm but edged with urgency. Henry, she's on the move. If we want answers, today is the day. Within half an hour we were trailing Madison's silver Honda along Interstate 10, heading toward Las Vegas. The desert sun blazed across the asphalt, the sky an endless sheet of white-blue heat. I sat stiffly in the passenger seat, gripping the door handle as if it might steady the storm inside me. My heart hammered against my ribs like a war drum. Every mile brought me closer to a truth I had never imagined I'd have to face. Linda's voice cut through the tension. Whatever we see today, we record it all. Photos, video, addresses. We need evidence that sticks. 4 hours later, we watched as Madison turned down a quiet street in a modest Las Vegas suburb. She pulled into the driveway of a small stucco house with neatly trimmed hedges. No hesitation, no knock. She stepped out, walked up to the front door, and pulled a key from her pocket. With practiced ease, she slid it into the lock and let herself inside. She has a key, I whispered, my throat dry. She has a key, Linda repeated grimly, already raising her camera. We parked across the street, the engine off, and waited. My stomach twisted tighter with each passing minute. 20 minutes later, the front door opened again. Madison stepped outside, but she wasn't alone. A tall man with dark hair followed her, moving with the ease of someone who belonged there. He slipped his arm around her waist and kissed her. Not a hurried peck, but a long, intimate embrace that erased any doubt. My chest caved in. The world tilted, and then came the final blow. 2 children burst through the doorway, laughing, their little feet pounding against the concrete porch. A boy, no older than 8, and a girl of maybe 5. Their voices rang out, bright and eager. "Mommy, Mommy, you're home!" The word mommy hit me like a sledgehammer. My breath stopped. My hands shook. I watched as Madison scooped up the little girl, spinning her around in a circle, while the boy clung tightly to her hand with possessive pride. She was their mother, not just a visitor, not just a step into another life. She was their entire world. "Do you see this?" I croaked, my lips numb. Linda didn't look away from her lens, the shutter clicking relentlessly. "I see it, Henry. And I'm sorry." The man, her husband, stepped down onto the driveway, a simple gold band glinting on his finger. Madison wore one too, but it wasn't the ring Ethan had given her. He draped his arm around her shoulders as they headed toward a waiting minivan, the picture of domestic ease. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice hollow. Linda exhaled slowly. "Judging by the children's ages, at least 8 years, maybe longer." 8 years, which meant Madison had been married, with children, long before she ever met Ethan. Their entire relationship, their entire marriage had been a lie from the beginning. We followed them to a nearby park. The golden light of afternoon stretched across the playground. I watched from a distance as Madison pushed her daughter on the swings, her laughter bright and unguarded in a way I had never once seen around Ethan. The little boy swung from the monkey bars, running back every few minutes to show something to the man Carlos Ramirez, if Linda's instincts were right. Each time, the man's face lit with easy affection, the effortless warmth of a devoted father. This was her real family, her real life. And my son had been nothing more than a paycheck. "Look at the license plate," Linda murmured, adjusting her camera. I squinted through the zoom lens. Nevada plates. And the name stamped bold across the registration frame. Ramirez. Ramirez. She wasn't even a Mitchell. Maybe she wasn't even a Madison. Every letter carved deeper into my chest, slicing away the last illusion that she had ever belonged in my family. We stayed for 3 hours, documenting everything. The house address, the license plate, photos of Madison with her children, videos of her unlocking the door, every detail we could capture. Piece by piece, we built a file of undeniable truth. As we drove back toward Phoenix, the neon lights of Las Vegas fading in the rearview mirror, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time since Eleanor's passing, my thoughts were razor sharp. "Linda," I said, my voice steady as steel, "I don't want to just expose her. I want to destroy her completely." She glanced at me, weighing my tone. "Henry, I understand you're angry." I shook my head. "No, this isn't anger anymore. This is something colder. This is war." I turned to her, my eyes burning with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. "And I intend to crush her until there's nowhere left for her to hide." The Monday after our Las Vegas discovery, Linda and I sat inside the downtown Phoenix office of Daniel Brooks, one of the most respected family law attorneys in the state. The walls rose high, lined with endless shelves of leather-bound law books. The faint scent of old paper and worn leather filled the air. But it wasn't the books that commanded my attention. It was Daniel himself. His eyes gleamed sharply behind his glasses, the eyes of a seasoned predator who had just caught the scent of blood in the water. "Let me get this straight," Daniel said, scrolling through the photos and videos on Linda's laptop. His voice was steady but carried the subtle thrill of a hunter closing in. "Your daughter-in-law, Madison Carter, has been living a double life for years, married to another man, with children, while bleeding your son dry to bankroll the family she actually belongs to." "Exactly," I replied. My voice was flat, controlled, but my fists clenched. "And when I tried to cut her off, she threatened to declare me mentally incompetent unless I kept paying. She called me a worthless old man, said she had lawyers who could destroy me." Daniel leaned back slowly, steepling his fingers. A predatory smile curled across his face. His hands tapped lightly together, each click echoing in my imagination like the gavel of a judge sealing Madison's fate. "Mr. Carter," he said, "in 30 years of practice, I've rarely seen a case this clear-cut. What Madison has done isn't just morally bankrupt, it's criminal on multiple levels. Fraud, bigamy, elder abuse, extortion. With this evidence, he gestured at the spread of photos and documents, we can ruin her legally, financially, and socially. Linda reached into her satchel and placed a thick binder on the table. The sound it made when it hit the polished wood was like a hammer striking stone. I've documented everything, she said firmly. Addresses, license plates, time-stamped photographs, video recordings. I also pulled records on the name Ramirez from the Nevada registration. She slid the file forward. Daniel opened it and raised his brows. Her real name, Linda continued, is Madison Ramirez. She's been married to Carlos Ramirez since 2012. They co-own the Las Vegas house. She's listed as the mother on both children's birth certificates. And here's the kicker, this isn't her first con. A chill ran through me. My hands gripped the armrests of my chair. What do you mean? Linda flipped to another section of the binder. 2 separate complaints, one in Arizona, another in California, both from elderly men whose sons had suddenly gotten involved with women matching Madison's description. Both men drained of their savings. The same pattern, flattery, manipulation, then financial exploitation. Daniel let out a low whistle. So we're not just looking at a manipulative wife. We're looking at a professional scam artist, and a very good one. Too good, Linda muttered, but this time her greed overreached. I could almost hear the blood rushing in my ears. My entire body went cold as the weight of it settled in. 3 years of humiliation and loss, and it was only a chapter in a much longer book of victims. Daniel leaned forward and began typing on his keyboard. Each keystroke rang like a death sentence for Madison. Here's what we'll do. First, we'll file criminal charges: fraud, bigamy, elder abuse, extortion. The district attorney is going to salivate over this. But before that, we'll hit her with something more personal, a civil lawsuit. He turned the screen toward us. We'll sue for every cent she stole, plus punitive damages. We'll place a lien on the Las Vegas property. We'll freeze her accounts. And when the criminal charges hit, she'll be broke, cornered, and defenseless. Can we really do all that? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. With this evidence, Daniel said without hesitation, we can do anything we want. She committed crimes against you, Mr. Carter, and the law is firmly on your side. Linda shifted in her chair. And Ethan? When he finds out the truth, it will crush him. A hollow satisfaction rose in my chest. Ethan made his choice when he let his wife insult me, threaten me, and strip me of dignity. He chose her over his father. Now he'll live with the consequences. Daniel nodded approvingly. Then we're all agreed. Tomorrow we file the civil suit. Wednesday we lodge the criminal complaints. By Friday, Madison Ramirez will realize that the old man she tried to bully has teeth sharp enough to tear her apart. As we left Daniel's office, the noon sun burned down on Phoenix, but I felt a strange, icy calm. Linda touched my arm gently. Henry, once we start this, there's no turning back. Are you sure? I thought of Madison's sneers, her venomous threats, her years of manipulation. I thought of Ethan's cowardice, the way he looked at the floor instead of defending his own father. I thought of the 3 years I'd spent as a walking ATM, mistaken generosity for love, endured humiliation out of fear of being alone. I looked back at the gleaming glass doors of the law office. For the first time in years, I felt alive. No more victim, I said quietly to myself. It's time for a new story, the story of an old man who fought back and won. 3 weeks later, I stepped into courtroom B of the Maricopa County Superior Court with Linda Morales at my side and Daniel Brooks leading the way. The room was already packed to the rafters. Rows of spectators and a thicket of local reporters crowded the benches, their lenses glinting under the fluorescence. Camera shutters clicked in nervous bursts. Whispers slithered through the gallery, braiding into a taut hum that felt like a violin string drawn to breaking point. The local news had turned the story of an old man standing up to family fraud into the city's obsession. Across the aisle sat Madison. She wore a pale gray business dress and a soft cardigan, her hair swept into a neat bun. She had crafted the look of a dutiful daughter-in-law, all modest lines and lowered lashes. But when her gaze collided with mine, the practiced sympathy in her face cracked. Behind it flickered something raw and startled panic. Ethan sat directly behind her, shoulders caved inward, eyes swollen and hollow, as though he hadn't slept since the charges were filed. He hadn't tried to speak to me once. Presiding over it all was Judge Patricia Williams, high on the bench, steel-framed glasses, silver hair tied back, and a gaze that could cut marble. She was notorious in Phoenix for her zero tolerance in elder abuse cases. When she lifted her gavel, the room stilled as if the air itself obeyed her. "Mr. Brooks," she said, voice firm but even, "you may proceed." Daniel rose with the unconcerned confidence of a man who knew the ground beneath his feet was bedrock. "Your Honor," he began, "this case is about a woman who is not who she claims to be, who systematically exploited a 78-year-old widower, Mr. Henry Carter, while maintaining a clandestine life with another man and 2 children. The defendant, Madison Ramirez, has lived a double life for over 8 years. We will show that she was married to Carlos Ramirez, that she has 2 children with him, and that she cynically manipulated Mr. Carter's son, Ethan, to siphon over $41,000 from Mr. Carter's retirement." He gestured toward the evidence cart. "We will demonstrate this fraud with photographic evidence, financial records, and, finally, a recording that reveals the defendant's true nature." The lights dimmed, the projector hummed to life. On the large screen, the images began to roll. Madison on the driveway of a modest stucco home in Las Vegas. Madison unlocking the door with her own key. Madison wrapped in Carlos Ramirez's arms, kissing him openly on the porch. Madison lifting a laughing little girl into her arms while a boy tugged at her hand, both children calling her Mommy. Shot after shot, time-stamped, clear, undeniable. The courtroom's murmurs died into a vacuum. A few gasps rose and evaporated. Someone in the gallery let out a soft, sorrowful "oh." Madison's public defender lurched to his feet. "Objection prejudicial." "Overruled," Judge Williams said without looking away from the screen. "The photos are plainly relevant to the alleged scheme." The next series of evidence was colder, harder. Bank statements, monthly transfers, canceled checks, text confirmations of emergency payments. Daniel walked the court through each transaction with surgical precision. $500 for rent, grocery money, car payments after Ethan lost his job, holiday gifts, medical emergencies that neatly coincided with trips to Nevada. Each line item tightened a noose woven of numbers and dates and the quiet agony of 3 years. "And now," Daniel said, "the recording." The speakers crackled, and then Madison's voice, unmistakable, flooded the courtroom, magnified and unvarnished. "Listen carefully, you sanctimonious old bastard. We're not leaving until you call that bank and restore our access. And if you don't, we'll make sure everyone knows how confused and unstable you've become." A ripple of outrage rolled through the gallery. A woman in the back clapped a hand over her mouth. Judge Williams' jaw tightened, her fingers curled once around the gavel. I saw Ethan flinch as if struck. Madison folded in on herself, hands flying up to cover her face. For the first time, the persona faltered completely. There was no mask left, only the naked sound of her contempt reverberating through every corner of the room. "The prosecution rests its evidentiary narrative for now, Your Honor," Daniel said, and then, "I call Henry Carter to the stand." I rose. The sound of my shoes on the wood was steady, measured. For 3 years, I'd lived in the shadow of embarrassment and humiliation. Today, I felt the weight of my years transform into ballast. I took the oath and sat, spine straight, palms easy. "Mr. Carter," Daniel said gently, "how did you feel when you discovered your daughter-in-law's deception?" "Like a fool," I said, clearly and without shame. "But the money was only part of it. Yes, $41,000 was my retirement cushion. My late wife, Eleanor, and I scraped and saved for 40 years to build it. But what truly burned was the lying, the manipulation, the way she made me feel worthless while she stole from me to feed another life, her real family." "And how do you feel now?" Daniel asked. I looked directly at Madison, who still hid behind her hands, shoulders shaking ever so slightly. I feel like I finally have my dignity back. The public defender tried to cross-examine, but there was nothing left to cut. He asked where I got the money, why I gave it, whether I ever said no. The answers were simple, quiet, devastating. There was no defense for the photos, the timestamps, the bank transfers, the audio where Madison threatened to have me declared incompetent to pry open my accounts. The mask would not reattach. Judge Williams leaned forward. Her gaze swept the courtroom, the screen gone dark, the piles of documents stacked in austere silence, the jury of onlookers who were not a jury but felt like one all the same. "In 30 years on this bench," she said at last, her voice ringing with a cold clarity, "rarely have I seen elder abuse and fraud presented so plainly. Miss Ramirez," she turned to Madison, "you systematically deceived and exploited a vulnerable older man, and in doing so, you fractured multiple families." The gavel poised above its block. "On all counts, I find you guilty." Time stretched thin as wire. "You are sentenced to 5 years in state prison," Judge Williams continued, "and ordered to pay full restitution to Mr. Carter in the amount of $41,000, plus punitive damages totaling $200,000. The gavel struck. The sound cracked through the courtroom like lightning splitting a dry summer sky. For a suspended beat no one moved, then the gallery erupted into whispers and the shuffle of bodies rising to see. The bailiffs approached, cuffing Madison's wrists. She finally looked up at me as they turned her toward the door. The contempt was gone. In its place was something I had never seen in her eyes before: fear. As they led her away, the room slowly exhaled. Reporters rushed out to file their updates. Spectators trickled toward the exits, buzzing like a disturbed hive. Ethan remained seated, deflated, staring at nothing. I couldn't read whether he was processing or simply collapsing. It didn't matter, not yet. Justice had been served. But my story wasn't over. Not by a long stretch. Outside the courthouse, the Arizona sun blazed down on the marble steps, turning the air into a shimmering haze. A swarm of reporters closed in around me like bees, microphones thrust toward my face, cameras flashing so furiously it felt like lightning striking in daylight. Voices overlapped, each one demanding to know how I felt, what justice meant to me, what would come next. I lifted my chin, fixing my gaze on one of the lenses. My voice rang out, steady and unflinching. "I finally remember who I am. Not a victim, not an ATM, a man with dignity who refuses to be trampled." For a moment, the crowd hushed. Pens scratched against notepads, recorders caught every syllable. I didn't elaborate further. I didn't need to. Those words were enough. As the press pack thinned and began to scatter, I saw him, Ethan. He stood apart at the base of the steps, alone, hunched as though the verdict itself had caved in his chest. His shoulders sagged, his face was ashen, his eyes red-rimmed from weeping. He didn't look like a 32-year-old man anymore. He looked like a lost boy. "Dad!" His voice cracked, barely audible above the scrape of reporters leaving. He shuffled closer, hands trembling slightly. "Dad, I swear I didn't know. I didn't know about Carlos or the kids. I thought Madison loved me." His eyes searched mine, desperate for a flicker of mercy. I studied his face. Yes, there was shock there, grief even. But behind it lingered the same weakness that had let his wife demean me, day after day, without him lifting a finger. "I believe you didn't know about her other family," I said evenly. His eyes lit with a faint, desperate hope. Then I added, my voice sharpening like a blade, "But you knew how cruelly she treated me. You heard her call me names. You saw her threaten me, humiliate me, strip me of dignity, and you said nothing. You stood by her." His lip trembled. "Dad, I was just trying to keep the peace. I thought—" "No," I cut him off. "You thought it was easier to hand over my money and let her destroy me than to stand up for what was right." Tears streaked his cheeks. "I'm sorry, Dad. Please, can't we be a family again?" His voice shook with pleading. His eyes clung to me like a drowning man to driftwood, as if my forgiveness could wash away 3 years of betrayal. But the hope flickered and died under the weight of truth. "Ethan," I said, steady and cold, "for 3 years I watched you let your wife treat me like an ATM. When she threatened to declare me insane just to get my money, you stood silent like a coward. You made your choice long ago. You chose her over me, convenience over courage, money over family." I turned and began to walk away, each step heavy but resolute. Then I stopped. Slowly, I glanced back at the broken man still standing on the courthouse steps. "The saddest part," I said quietly, "is that you could have had me on your side forever if you had treated me like a human being. All I ever wanted was respect and love. Instead, you gave me contempt and betrayal." "Dad, please." His voice was a strangled whisper. I shook my head. "Goodbye, Ethan." The words fell like a verdict. I walked away, the sound of my footsteps echoing off the marble, swallowed by the dry Arizona wind. No grief, no rage, only a strange, cold peace. For the first time in years, I felt free because I had chosen dignity over toxic blood. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment in Sedona. Before me, the red cliffs blazed under the glow of sunset, carved by centuries of wind and time, rising against a sky so impossibly blue it seemed to stretch into eternity. The air carried the scent of juniper and desert sage, and for the first time in years, I felt as if the world was wide open again. This wasn't just a new place to live, it was the beginning of an entirely new life. The restitution had been paid in full. Every last dollar was accounted for. Madison's Las Vegas house had been sold off, its proceeds stripped down to cover the damages she owed. The paperwork, stamped and signed, felt like a ceremonial cutting of chains, as though the last ties binding me to that nightmare had finally been severed. With each page filed, with each check cashed, the weight I had carried for 3 years lifted further from my shoulders. And then there was Linda Morales. Once just the sharp-eyed woman across the street, she had become my closest companion, the steady presence I hadn't realized I needed. We spent our days wandering through the marvels of Arizona, carving new memories out of landscapes older than time itself. We drove the winding roads that clung to the edges of the Grand Canyon, hiked down into the quiet shade of Oak Creek Canyon, and sat side by campfires under the endless desert stars. Sometimes she would laugh that unguarded, genuine laugh, and I would feel something thaw inside me that I thought Eleanor's death and Madison's betrayal had frozen forever. Linda gave me back something I had thought buried with the past. Trust. Not the naive trust that had once left me vulnerable, but a tempered kind of faith, the kind that knew pain, recognized danger, and still chose to believe in someone worthy. With her, I learned that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of connection. It can also be the doorway to deeper, wiser bonds. Occasionally, through whispers from old acquaintances, I heard fragments of news about Ethan. He had moved in with Madison's mother after the trial, his life reduced to ashes of what he once believed was a marriage. The house he thought was his forever home had been dissolved into legal dust. He now juggled 2 jobs, grinding away in silence, his figure shrinking under the weight of exhaustion and depression. I could picture him a shadow of the man he should have been, hunched, weary, stripped of purpose. A part of me felt a flicker of pity, an echo of the fatherly instinct that once guided my every decision. But only a very small part. That spark of pity was quickly extinguished by a colder, sharper truth. Pity could not restore what Ethan had willingly surrendered. He had chosen silence over integrity, complicity over courage, betrayal over blood. And so, instead of mourning what had been lost, I embraced what I had gained. Freedom, peace, a second chance at living life on my terms. Looking out over Sedona's red cliffs, I knew this much. My story was no longer one of defeat, it was one of rebirth. One evening, as the Sedona sunset painted the red cliffs in fire and gold, I leaned against the balcony rail with a glass of wine in my hand. The desert wind carried both the warmth of the fading day and the first hint of night's chill. Beside me, Linda Morales rested a hand on my shoulder. Her voice was soft, but her eyes searched mine deeply as she asked, "Henry, if you could go back to the beginning, would you do anything differently?" Do you regret what you've done? Never, I answered without hesitation. For the first time in years, I woke each morning knowing no one was exploiting me, manipulating me, or twisting my kindness into weakness. I was free, Linda. Truly free. She hesitated, then asked the question she knew cut deepest. And Ethan? Will you ever forgive him? The sound of my son's name cracked something inside me. The image of him in that courtroom, head bowed, avoiding my gaze while his wife's venom filled the air, came flooding back. I sat in silence for a long while, hearing each tick of the wall clock as if it were a hammer striking my ribs. Forgiveness isn't about him anymore, I finally said. It's about me. I've forgiven myself for being naive, for mistaking generosity for love, for letting others trample my dignity just because I feared being alone. I swirled the wine in my glass, watching the crimson light flicker across its surface, then lifted it toward the horizon as though toasting my own rebirth. The silence of an empty room, I realized, is 1,000 times sweeter than the hollow laughter of those who bleed you dry. As stars began to prick through the desert sky, peace settled over me in a way I hadn't known since Eleanor passed. My name is Henry Carter. I am 78 years old, and I have learned at last that self-respect is not selfish. It is essential. Tonight, 1 year after that midnight phone call that upended everything, I want to share the most important lessons I've learned. Not only for older men and women who may face betrayals like mine, but for anyone who has ever felt used by the people they loved. The first lesson is this: love should never carry a price tag. Real love does not come with conditions, threats, or financial obligations. If someone demands you sign checks to keep their affection, what they're offering isn't love, it's an invoice. And invoices will never buy happiness. The second lesson took me 78 years to grasp. Setting boundaries is not cruelty, it is necessity. For too long, I mistook generosity for weakness. I believed that saying no meant I didn't love my family enough. But boundaries are not walls to shut people out. They are gates, opened only to those who knock with respect. God gave us wisdom for a reason, and part of that wisdom is knowing when to protect ourselves. The third lesson may be the hardest of all. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the very ones we thought we could never lose. Ethan is my son, my only child, my last link to Eleanor. I once believed that between father and son there was a bond nothing could sever, but greed and weakness sliced through it faster than any blade. Learning that he would stand by while Madison insulted and threatened me cut deeper than losing money ever could. Blood, I discovered, does not always mean loyalty. The fourth lesson is about forgiveness, but not the kind people usually expect. I did not forgive Madison, she never earned it. I did not forgive Ethan, he never asked. Instead, I forgave myself. Forgiving myself was harder than forgiving any betrayer. It meant staring into the mirror and admitting that I had allowed toxic people to leech my spirit for far too long. And yet, as Christ taught, forgiveness is liberation, not just for the other person, but for your own soul. But the greatest lesson of all is this: it is never too late to reclaim your life. At 78, I believed my story was winding down. Like so many old men you hear about, I thought I was too old to change, too set in my ways to begin again. I was wrong. The day I decided I would no longer be a victim but a warrior was the day my real life began. Now, each morning I wake in my beautiful Sedona apartment, surrounded not by schemers but by friends who value me for who I am. I travel when I wish. I spend my money on things that bring joy, not chains. And at night, I sleep peacefully, knowing no one is plotting to exploit my kindness. Linda and I have even started a support group for seniors facing financial abuse within their families. We call it the Silver Warriors, because age doesn't make you weak. Experience makes you dangerous to those who would exploit you. We share stories of triumph from men and women who refuse to be silent, proving that it is never too late to fight back. So if you are hearing these words and see yourself in my story, listen closely. You are stronger than you think. You have more choices than they want you to believe. And you deserve more respect than they give you. Trust in God's plan for your life, because He never intended you to live in abuse or despair. Don't wait until you're 78 to learn what I did. Don't waste years financing those who treat you as an ATM rather than a human being. Don't let anyone convince you that love equals submission to abuse. Your money is yours, your dignity is yours, your peace of mind is yours, and anyone who tries to steal those things from you is not family, they are thieves wearing familiar faces. So stand up, fight back, reclaim your life. Because unlike the old tales where elders surrender quietly to fate, you can choose to be the hero of your own story. Respect is not bought, it is earned. And love without respect? That is not love at all. My name is Henry Carter. 78 years of life have taught me many lessons, but the greatest one came when I thought I was far too old to change. This is not just a story of betrayal and justice. It is proof that age is not a sentence. Sometimes, it is the doorway to an entirely new life. For most of my years, I believed that love meant giving everything away, even when my heart bled dry. I thought endurance was virtue, and silence was strength. But I was wrong. True love, real, enduring love begins when you love yourself enough to say, enough. Loving yourself enough to set limits is not selfishness. It is the act of saving your own soul from being destroyed. Today, as I sit by my window in Sedona, the morning light spilling across a cup of steaming coffee, I know I am no longer a victim in my own story. I am the author. The pen is in my hand, and the chapters ahead are mine to write. No one else will decide them for me. And if my journey resonates with you, if you see your own reflection somewhere within my pain, I ask only this: do not keep it to yourself. Share it with those who may need to hear it, because you never know how a single story can reach into the darkness and pull another soul back from despair. Remember this: heroes don't always wear armor or fight on battlefields. Sometimes, a hero is simply the person who dares to stand up, protect their dignity, and reclaim their heart. And that is something you can do no matter your age, no matter your scars. It is never too late to become the hero of your own story. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of something in your own life, let me know in the comments below. Your voice matters, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to hit the like button if you found value here, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story of courage, justice, and redemption. And if you know someone who might need to hear this, please share it, because sometimes a story can change a life.